Hey, my name is Brad, and I've got another story to tell you guys. So this past week, my wife's minivan was driving pretty rough. We heard this nasty springing noise from the right front tire, and we realized we probably had a broken spring or a bad strut. Had my son Anthony come over to replace them. When he pulled the one out, the spring was broken on it, which is not cool. And that reminded me of something that happened, again, a long time ago. This is my junior year of high school. My sister Tammy was teaching at Dayton Christian, where I attended school, where my dad was guidance counselor. And Tammy needed a car out of college, her first car that she bought out of college. She bought a 1967 red Mustang. This thing was absolutely gorgeous. Needed some work. Front suspension needed to be changed, had some electrical issues. Previous owner had put thrush glass pack mufflers on it, so it sounded really mean, even though it only had the straight six. Wasn't that fast of a car, but at least it sounded good at red lights. It was automatic with the T shifter on the floor, which was awesome. So Tammy had told me that if Dad and I would do the work on the car, she would buy the parts, we would do the work, and then we could drive it whenever we wanted to if she wasn't using it. So I thought that was a great deal. So we got in there and started looking at this thing, and the entire front suspension pretty much needed to be replaced. And unlike today's cars where you can buy a quick strut, do 5 bolts, put it in, back then you had to, you had springs and you had your shock absorber, and all that stuff was not one assembly. You had to put it all together. So Dad and I went to work on this thing. We lived in a house not too far from here, the one that we built, and it had a pretty big 2-car garage we could pull in on one side and leave the car up on jacks and until we got the thing finished. There's a lot of room to work in there, which was awesome. So one Saturday night, Dad and I were down there working on it, and it was time to put the suspension springs back in the car. So Dad told me, hey, these springs get, they're under high tension when they're in a car, and you really should buy these things called spring compression clips. It's a device you put in and you crank down with a bolt, and it compresses the spring safely that you can put in and then loosen it, and the spring then loosens back up and it slides right in. But we started to call the tool rental place, and it was closed. It was a Saturday night. They closed early, and we missed it by like a half an hour or something like that. So Dad was frustrated. We wanted to get this thing done so it wasn't hanging over our head, the rest of the weekend. So he said, you know what, I think I can probably pry the spring in with a crowbar. So he had me go around on the other side of the car, because if this thing cuts loose, it's quite dangerous. And he slid the top of the spring up into place, and he had the back edge in, but we had to pry the whole thing into the car so it would pop into place. So he gets the crowbar out, he slides it in, and he is straining and straining. I'm on the other side watching him, looking over the top of the hood, and his face is turning red. He's straining to put this thing into place. All of a sudden, I hear the spring cut loose, boing. I hear my dad go just like this. And I look and see his eyes this wide, and then he just kind of falls over. So I get up and run around. I was like, Dad, are you okay? And he's holding his manly parts, and he's looking around like he's shocked and surprised. And the spring is laying on the ground, the crowbar's laying on the ground, Dad's laying on the ground, and he looks up at me and goes, I think I am okay, surprisingly so. And what had happened is he had pried that loose. The spring had caught him. It was this big around, and it went right around all of his, his strategic parts, and hit off the top of his groin without touching anything super sensitive. And knocked him over, and he went down. So I thought Dad had, become a eunuch or something. But luckily, I think God was watching over him. He made that spring just miss everything important. We waited until Monday night. We got the compression clips and put the springs in safely, and we were then able to fix the rest of the car. So, my name is Brad. Again, thanks for listening to another one of my stories.